canine criminals, felines committing felonies, pigs in the mafia. Is it really possible for an animal to be a fugitive on the run from authorities? Now, we've all seen those sad pictures of puppies in the dog pound, but is it possible that there are animals that actually deserve to be behind bars? Believe it or not, the idea of an animal being taken to court and standing trial is not that crazy. In fact, it actually used to happen since at least the 1300s, and it carried on for hundreds of years. And it was not a joke or a stunt. These were real trials. There were eyewitnesses, and the animal was often even assigned a lawyer. I'm not sure how that lawyer got paid, but that's a whole other story. Almost every animal that stood trial was either a domesticated or farm animal, like pigs, horses, or cows. Occasionally, it was pests like rats or locusts, but never wild animals like wolves or bears. I mean, no one wants to cross-examine a bear on the witness stand. So what happened when an animal was found guilty? Did they get sent to animal jail? Well, it turns out that doesn't exist. Back then, they didn't even have a dog pound. So if an animal was found guilty, and unfortunately back then, most of the animals were, there were basically only two punishments. The first was exile, which means the animals are sent away, probably into the woods. The second was being put down. And if that sounds unpleasant, it's even weirder than you think. Sometimes they would dress the animals up like people before they put them down. Why did they do that? Who knows, honestly. Remember, this was the 1300s. There was no TV or electricity. People died of old age at 30. It was a pretty weird time. It's probably not a surprise that most animals who were put on trial ended up losing. Animals don't make for great witnesses. But every so often, one animal is found innocent because people testified on their behalf and the court took mercy on them. For example, in 1750, a donkey and her human co-defendant were accused of, let's just call it, inappropriate intimate behavior together. You can imagine this was shocking for the community. But the good news for her was that many people testified to her good behavior and her virtue, and that donkey was acquitted of all her charges. Her co-defendant, on the other hand, was found guilty and put to death. Can you imagine living in a town where your neighbors would testify that your donkey was a more upstanding citizen than you were? If they hadn't put him to death, he probably would have died of embarrassment. But all these stories are hundreds of years old, and we don't put animals on trial anymore, so they can't really be criminals, right? Well, sort of. They might not be criminals, but they sure can break the law. And that's why we're sharing our top 9 modern-day animal lawbreakers. Up first at number 9. It's September 2015 in Saskatchewan, Canada. It's early, and everyone is at the Tim Hortons getting their coffee. And one of those customers refuses to leave, and that customer happens to be Goliath, a goat who is part of the University of Saskatchewan rodeo team. No one knows how he escaped the university or why he chose that coffee shop to hang out in, but no matter how many times employees escorted him outside, he just kept coming back in through the automatic doors. They ended up calling the police, who did exactly what they would do with a human who was loitering. They threw him in the back of a squad car and took him off to spend the night in jail. Except in this case, jail was the local animal shelter. Next up, number 8. In Florida, in March of 2020, the Pembroke Pines Police Department tweeted an official plea for help from local residents. They were on the lookout for a fugitive that had eluded police for several months. It was pretty embarrassing for police to lose this fugitive because she weighed 1,600 pounds and didn't move very fast. That's right, she was a cow. Her wanted poster described her MO of hopping fences into people's yards and taking a swim in their pools. And sure enough, a week after the police put out the alert, the cow was finally apprehended. Now, despite her numerous trespassing crimes, the police did not charge her. They were probably embarrassed that it took so long to find her. Moving on to number 7. It's 2015 in Bottrop, West Germany. A woman walks down the street minding her own business when she notices she's being stalked by an obsessed redhead. At first, she plays it cool and hopes he'll go away. But then he gets aggressive and chases her. He simply wouldn't leave her alone. He moved too quickly and she was unable to get away. And the reason that he was so fast was because he was a small red squirrel, and he wouldn't stop stalking her. She couldn't escape. So she did what any stalking victim would. She called the cops. They arrested the squirrel and brought him back to the precinct for observation. That's when they discovered the squirrel was suffering from exhaustion, which was causing its crazy behavior. It's interesting that the squirrel had the same excuse that Hollywood celebrities do when they get caught screaming at their assistants in public. The police helped the squirrel get better by feeding him some honey, and then he was then sent to a rescue center instead of serving time. And now, that woman can safely walk the streets of Germany again. Coming in at number 6, it's always chaos shopping at Christmas time. But in December of 2016, a Maryland dollar store got even more chaotic when someone stormed in and started trashing the holiday decorations. The charge was vandalism and destruction of property, and the culprit was a grumpy beaver. He threw so much merchandise on the floor that the employees called the sheriff's office, but the beaver didn't give a damn. No one knows why he chose that store, but it's possible that once he was there, he was actually gathering supplies to build a dam, something that beavers have an instinct to do. If you've ever seen video of domesticated beavers, they still love to gather objects and build dams, even inside a house. The beaver was taken by animal control, and even though he never served time, he did have to meet with a wildlife rehabilitator. Heading into our top 5 with number 5. Our next criminal worked for a drug cartel in Colombia in 2010. Lorenzo was a lookout at the cartel's safe house, and when he saw police approaching, he would warn the cartel members by shouting, "Run, run, the cat is going to get you." Lorenzo was aiding drug dealers in concealing their crimes, something that could have gotten him a serious charge if he were a person instead of a green and yellow parrot. Lorenzo was raised by cartel members, and he was trained to speak specifically to protect them. And it worked for a long time. But one day, police were able to sneak past Lorenzo, and they found what he was protecting: 200 weapons, a stolen motorcycle, and a huge stash of marijuana. 4 cartel members were arrested, and so was Lorenzo. The only question left is, when he was in custody, what did he tell the cops? Time for our number 4 mammal misdemeanor. It was New Year's Day in Brazil 2013. Outside the walls of a medium security prison, guards saw a cute white cat in what might have been a good omen for the new year. It was a cat who often visited the prison, raised and fed by the inmates. But upon closer inspection, guards noticed there was something on the cat's body that looked like tape. After finally catching the cat, they saw that it was indeed tape, and that tape was securing some items to its body: a saw and a drill, a memory card, batteries, and a phone charger. That's right, the cat was smuggling supplies into the prison to help someone plan a jailbreak. But prison officials weren't able to figure out which of the 263 inmates the cat was working with. The jailbreak supplies were confiscated, the prison escape was thwarted, and the cat was sent to an animal shelter for medical treatment. But for all we know, there's a new cat being trained to replace him right now. And now for our number 3 furry felon. Remember when I said that there was no such thing as animal jail? Well, that doesn't mean that an animal can't serve time. She just has to do it in a regular jail. Katya was a brown bear who lived near a campsite in Kazakhstan in 2004. Because she was a bear, she did what bears do when people are around. She attacked and mauled them. A couple of them, in fact. It happened enough times that the authorities were called to deal with the situation. They didn't know what to do because they wanted to stop the maulings, but they didn't just want to kill the bear. So they did what police officers do. They threw the bear in prison. Katya was sentenced to a 15-year prison term in a penal colony in Kostanay. Adding insult to injury, it was a men's penal colony, so she was the only female there. But she had her own cell, her own little swimming pool, and 700 inmates who fed and cared for her. When her 15-year sentence was over, she was released into the custody of a zoo, where she began her post-prison life with others of her kind, including a handsome male bear named Yashka, who was reportedly very happy to meet her. Back at Kostanay, Katya's time as a prisoner was commemorated with a large statue of her that graced the prison grounds. And now, our top 2 get serious. At number 2, in 2015, police officers in India arrested a suspected spy near the border of Pakistan, near an area called Kashmir, which has been the location of many wars and military clashes because both India and Pakistan claim rights to that area. The captured spy in question was a pigeon. But not just any pigeon. This pigeon had a secret message written on it, partially written in Urdu, the official language of Pakistan. It read, "Tehsil Shikargar District Narawal, which is a description of a location in Pakistan, and it was followed by what looked like a phone number. The pigeon with the mysterious message was taken into police custody and then x-rayed and extensively inspected. No other evidence of espionage was found, but the message and the location where the pigeon was found was enough for Indian officials to list the pigeon as a suspected spy in their police diary. Now, could the pigeon have just been a pet pigeon with an owner who marked him so he could be returned? Perhaps, but if he were a spy pigeon, that would make a great cover story, wouldn't it? And that brings us to animal criminal number 1. You've probably heard the expression, an elephant never forgets. But did you know that it even applies to murder? In 2022, in Odisha, India, a 68-year-old woman named Maya Murmu was out collecting water in her village when a herd of elephants suddenly headed in her direction. She attempted to run away, but one elephant in particular pursued her, rushing towards her and trampling her. She was rushed to the hospital with serious injuries, where she died moments later. No one could understand what had happened and why, but this was just the beginning of the story. Later that same evening, Maya's body was brought home to prepare for a funeral ceremony. In the midst of the ceremony, they heard quiet rumbling that got louder and louder. And that's when the same herd of elephants appeared from the forest, scaring away the villagers at the ceremony. They didn't have time to collect Maya's body as they ran away. That's when the same elephant from earlier in the day that attacked and injured Maya once again grabbed Maya's body and threw it into the air. Then that elephant and the rest of the herd destroyed Murmu's home. No one else in the village was harmed, and the elephant in question had traveled over 100 miles from the Dalma Wildlife Sanctuary to find and attack her. Now, some people suspected that perhaps Maya had been part of a poacher group that had killed the elephant's baby. With Maya passed on, no one knows for certain. But one thing is sure. The elephant recognized her, remembered her, and attacked in a way very unlike the natural reaction of her kind. She wanted revenge for something. And there you have it. 9 tales of animal run-ins with the law. Every one of them is lucky that animal trials went out of style back in the 1800s, or their stories might have ended very differently. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more unbelievable legal facts. That's it for this episode of No Way That's Legal. We'll see you next time.